A lot going on. This weekend I was planning for a road trip that I'm going to take with Andrew and Albie shortly after church. We're going to leave right after church next Sunday. We're driving to South Dakota, where none of us have ever been, to see some completely different landscape, enjoy some national parks while we still have them, and hopefully, if it's cool enough, hike. So I've organized my Google planning doc under a few headings: packing lists, groceries, itinerary. The packing list has things very specific to this trip, such as hiking shoes, our national parks passbook, binoculars, a French press for coffee. Now, the grocery list is meant to keep us focused on what we actually need and not just the trashy and very delicious road trip snacks that I will buy if I go without a list. So we need stuff for sandwiches and also coarse ground coffee for the French press. Now the itinerary section is the most detailed because when I plan a trip, I always include 3 things that I have to do for every day. Do, eat, stay. What are we doing? What are we going to eat? Where are we going to eat? And where are we going to stay? And then even those sections are divided down. The eat section is divided into meals: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and if I'm planning to go out for breakfast, I always include the name and the address of at least 2 coffee shops that I've already looked up and decided upon, because how people talked about them. Coffee is so important when I travel. Anyway, the planning doc also links to maps and routes, etc., etc. I've planned for us to see Rushmore, drive Needles Highway, take a hike. I've planned for the routes between the Airbnb to those different places. I've marked coffee shops on the route and grocery lists. And also on the grocery list, they have cans of iced coffee to keep in the cooler with us. So, despite what I've shared with you, when my family takes a road trip, we actually really do like to leave room for the unexpected and allow for those surprise destinations to take us off the main road and invite us to explore something that we weren't planning. I also know that all of us, not just me, but Andrew and Albie, are way more up for all of those things, and we're well fed and well rested and well caffeinated. We're totally fine with going off script, but there's something incredibly comforting and stabilizing about going in with a plan, a very detailed plan. In other words, none of this carry no purse, no bag, no sandals business that Jesus instructs his disciples before sending them out in pairs. What is Jesus even doing here, sending his friends out ahead of him to the places that he's planning to go to? Is he having them do recon so that he's a little more prepared before heading into these cities to preach about all that God is up to? Or is he using this opportunity to teach his friends and followers about what it means to be a part of God's project, to go boldly into the world proclaiming peace and sharing the message of the limitless love of God? So using this as an opportunity to tell his friends to underpack and just be ready and willing to confront whatever it is you encounter. So if that's the case, Jesus probably has a thing or two to say about me and my trip planning. But I actually think there's a couple things going on in this passage. Yes, Jesus has something to say about trusting in God and others who will invite the proclamation of God's presence, but actually this gospel passage is about a kind of spiritual warfare, and the spiritual warfare that Luke understands Jesus to be waging in very real, concrete ways in the here and now. Jesus sends out his friends to scout out those cities where he plans to visit without so much as a carry-on. This is in stark contrast to those Roman scouts who would go out into cities and take whatever was theirs. So it's a powerful blow against those who arrive in these towns, who tend to intimidate and pillage as occupying forces tend to do. These scouts are doing something different. This is what Luke is trying to say. So those who Jesus has sent out to greet others in the name of peace and wait to be invited in are very different than those who pillage and steal. those who Jesus sends out heal the sick and proclaim God's kingdom, not the Roman emperor's kingdom. First things he tells his friends to do is to offer peace, and if it is not welcome, then to move on, still proclaiming to them even who reject them the nearness of God's kingdom. Again, this is the very opposite tactics of the Roman Empire and soldiers for the Roman emperor. Jesus' spiritual war, quote-unquote, tactics are the very opposite of those carefully planned, meticulously cruel tactics of the Roman Empire. Well, these tactics of the Jesus' friends may seem small and insignificant, maybe even tiny and weak in the face of the power of empire. That is, until all 70 whom Jesus has sent come back proclaiming with joy, Lord, in your name, even the demons submit to us. Jesus says he's seen even Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning, and that his way, the way of peace, is how he's actually given them power. They aren't just being nice, Jesus' followers. They're doing something powerful and world-changing, presenting themselves in an act of peace and welcome, and trusting in God. They are powerfully combating the injustice and oppression waged by the Roman Empire. So I am not heading out to wage any spiritual warfare next week. And I'm guessing that none of you are in your travel plans, but I do think that Jesus might have actually something to say about the way we travel and visit other places. So here's what I've been thinking about this week. We're pretty entitled. We're a pretty entitled people, Americans. And that entitlement has a tendency to come out in full force in the summer travel season. Maybe you know who I'm talking about, demanding travelers who intimidate hotel staff or park staff or restaurant staff. We've paid good money for this trip. And woe to anyone or anything that ruins the carefully laid and paid for plans. Perhaps Jesus sent out his friends without a purse so they didn't feel entitled to anything at all. They couldn't demand anything. No pissy fits about a noisy air conditioner, food not arriving on time quickly enough. Likewise, approaching new towns without so much as a carry-on bag, they had to stay present to all they encountered and respond accordingly, identifying who would share in the peace that they offered and welcome whatever came their way. It's a really risky task to go and prepare the way for Jesus in this way, vulnerable and unprepared. Jesus even acknowledges this and says that he's sending lambs out among the wolves. But what an opportunity as well to proclaim God's kingdom, to truly encounter people and to share with them something different, and to encounter something different. So perhaps this week, this summer, we can remember these woefully unprepared for travel friends of Jesus. Perhaps we can wonder what weird and wonderful things we might encounter if we intentionally underpack. To encounter the frustrations and wrenches in our travel plans by dusting off our feet and then saying, you know what, God is actually here too. Perhaps this gospel can be a good reminder to us to encounter the people who provide us with hospitality as we travel this summer or staycation in Chicago. Maybe we can encounter them with not a sense of entitlement, a sense of peace, to check that entitlement. Maybe go with the flow and stay present with others. This is actually kingdom work. We may not be intentionally waging spiritual warfare, but I think that these seemingly small acts of peace can actually be truly